Every morning, it begins. That jarring, insistent sound that rips you from the comfort of sleep, the alarm. It dictates when you rise, when you eat, when you work, when you live. But have you ever stopped to consider who set that alarm in the first place and why? Because the truth is, the very rhythm of your existence, the relentless ticking of the clock that governs every second of your day, isn't a natural phenomenon. It's the ghost of an ancient mistake, a phantom limb of history that still grips your modern life with surprising force. Imagine for a moment a world before the clock, a world where time was fluid, dictated by the sun's slow arc across the sky, the subtle shift of shadows, the changing light. People woke with the dawn, worked while the sun was high, rested when it dipped below the horizon. Their lives were synchronized with the earth's turning, a natural ebb and flow. But then, something shifted. We, humanity, decided we could do better. We could master time. Our story begins in the cradle of civilization, Mesopotamia. The Babylonians, ingenious as they were, looked up at the heavens and saw patterns. They were brilliant astronomers, meticulous record keepers, and in their quest to understand the cosmos, they made a choice that echoes through every single one of your waking hours. They divided the circle, a fundamental geometric shape, into 360 degrees. Seems reasonable, right? Elegant, even. But here's the rub. They also observed the roughly 360 days in a year. And in a monumental leap of logic, or perhaps convenience, they tied these two concepts together. A day, they reasoned, should be divided in a way that mirrored this celestial dance. Now hold on to that thought, because it gets stranger. Why 60 minutes in an hour? Why 60 seconds in a minute? Again, we journey back to Babylon. Their numerical system wasn't decimal like ours, based on 10 fingers and toes. It was sexagesimal, based on the number 60. Why 60? It's a highly composite number, meaning it has many divisors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, 30, 60. This made it incredibly useful for calculations, for dividing things easily without fractions. For an ancient society trying to parcel out land, manage resources, and track astronomical events, 60 was a mathematical godsend. So the die was cast. The 360-degree circle, born from astronomical observation and a touch of numerical convenience, the sexagesimal system, a practical tool for ancient mathematicians, these two ideas, seemingly innocuous, fused together to form the bedrock of our modern timekeeping. The day was divided into two cycles of 12 hours, the hour into 60 minutes, the minute into 60 seconds. And there it was, an arbitrary human-made construct imposed upon the natural world. Think about it. There is absolutely no inherent natural reason for a minute to have 60 seconds. The Earth doesn't spin in 60-second increments. The sun doesn't move across the sky in 60-minute chunks. This system wasn't discovered. It was invented. And critically, it was invented at a time when precision timekeeping, as we know it, didn't exist. Sundials and water clocks were the order of the day, far less accurate than the atomic clocks that now define our seconds. Fast forward through the millennia. The Greeks adopted aspects of this system. The Romans, with their pragmatic approach, refined it further. The concept of hours, though initially variable in length depending on the season, gradually solidified. But it was the mechanical clock, emerging in medieval Europe, that truly cemented this ancient mistake into our daily lives. Suddenly, time could be measured with unprecedented accuracy. Towns erected public clocks. Churches rang bells on the hour. People started to synchronize their lives not with the sun, but with the clatter and whir of gears. This was revolutionary, of course. It allowed for greater coordination, for the scheduling of markets, for the organization of work. But it also subtly, yet profoundly shifted. It's a silent agreement we've all entered into, a societal contract signed by generations long past. But what if we could renegotiate? What if we could glimpse a future where this ancient mistake, while not entirely eradicated, held less sway? The concept isn't entirely new. Remember the French Revolutionary calendar? For a brief, audacious period, France attempted to decimalize time, among other things. A week became 10 days. A month had 3 10-day decades, and the day itself was divided into 10 hours, each with 100 decimal minutes and 100 decimal seconds. Farmers, factory workers, citizens, everyone was suddenly forced to reorient their internal clocks. It was a fascinating, if ultimately doomed, experiment that lasted barely a decade. Why did it fail? Not because the math was wrong or because 10 is inherently inferior to 60. It failed because the established system, the one born of Babylon, was too deeply ingrained, too thoroughly woven into the fabric of daily life. The inertia of an ancient mistake was simply too powerful. Even today, subtle resistances emerge. The push for a 4-day work week, for instance. At its heart, it's a quiet rebellion against the rigid 9-to-5, 5-day structure, a desire to reclaim personal time from the relentless march of the clock. It acknowledges that human productivity and well-being aren't perfectly aligned with arbitrary 40-hour blocks. Companies experimenting with this often report increased employee satisfaction and, surprisingly, maintained or even improved productivity. This suggests that the factory floor model of time, inherited from the Industrial Revolution, might not be the optimal way to structure modern, knowledge-based work. Consider the very language we use. We spend time, we save time, we waste time, we make up for lost time. Time is a currency, a finite resource that can be squandered or invested. This linguistic framing isn't accidental. It's a reflection of how deeply this arbitrary, segmented view of time has permeated our culture and our cognition. We don't say we spend sunlight or save the breeze. But time, thanks to those ancient divisions and the mechanical clocks that enforced them, became something quantifiable, something that could be possessed or lost. This constant pressure to be on schedule creates a pervasive sense of urgency, even when there's no real emergency. It fuels our addiction to instant gratification, our inability to simply be without a predetermined activity. We check our phones incessantly, not just for information, but to fill every spare second, to ensure no moment is truly empty. An empty moment in our clock-dominated world can feel like a wasted one. And yet there are moments when we instinctively push back, when we lose ourselves in a creative endeavor, a deep conversation, or simply observing nature. We experience a different kind of time. Time seems to stretch, to flow, to disappear. This is a glimpse of that more natural, fluid relationship with duration that existed before the Babylonians and their sexagesimal system stamped their authority on our days. It's the echo of a life lived by the sun and stars, not by the relentless click of a second hand. The irony is our incredible technological advancements now allow for far greater flexibility. Remote work, asynchronous communication, global teams spanning multiple time zones. These innovations challenge the very notion of a universal, synchronized workday. But even as technology frees us from some of the clock's more rigid constraints, the underlying mental model of time as a series of discrete, measurable units persists. We still schedule video calls across continents, forcing early mornings or late nights, because the fundamental framework of hours and minutes remains unchallenged. So while we can't rewind history and undo the Babylonian choice, understanding its profound impact allows for a new perspective. It lets us question the absolute authority of the clock. It invites us to consider whether our constant striving for efficiency, our relentless pursuit of more in less time, is always serving our well-being. It prompts us to reflect on whether we are truly living within time or merely existing at its dictated pace. The ancient mistake continues to control our lives, but recognizing its arbitrary nature is the first step toward reclaiming a sense of agency, toward perhaps occasionally setting our own internal alarm. So while we can't rewind history and undo the Babylonian choice, understanding its profound impact allows for a new perspective. It lets us. What if we allowed ourselves to occasionally, consciously, step outside this inherited construct? Not to abandon all societal norms, but to cultivate a dual awareness, recognizing the external, arbitrary clock while simultaneously tuning into our own internal, organic rhythms. This might mean allowing a conversation to unfold without glancing at a watch, spending an afternoon lost in a book without a planned end time, or simply sitting in silence without feeling the urge to do something. Some cultures still retain vestiges of a more fluid relationship with time. In certain parts of the world, 5 minutes might mean something closer to soon, and soon could encompass a span of an hour or more. This isn't inefficiency, it's a different approach to scheduling, one that prioritizes relationships, context, and the natural pace of events over rigid adherence to a number on a dial. It challenges the Western notion that absolute punctuality is the pinnacle of civilized behavior. The invitation here isn't to dismantle society or discard our watches. It's to acknowledge the story behind the numbers that govern our lives. To understand that the minutes, hours, and days are not universal, immutable truths, but rather ingenious, yet arbitrary, human inventions. In fact, understanding the contingency of this system can be incredibly liberating. If it was invented, it can, at least in our minds and individual practices, be reimagined. By recognizing the ancient mistake, we empower ourselves to make more conscious choices about how we allocate our most precious resource. It allows us to ask, am I truly using my time, or is time using me? Am I living a life dictated by an inherited framework, or am I shaping my days in alignment with my deeper values and natural flow? The ghost of Babylon still controls much of our world, but with awareness, we can begin to draw our own maps, guided less by its ancient hand and more by the compass of our own conscious living.